Would you guys mind if I went into like the new research for how to get people to change their mind?
I would love it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is really neat. So Jonah Berger is the lead researcher on this, and I mean, who doesn't want to change someone's mind, right? You want
I'm in
to,
sales.
you want to,
Yeah, I mean, like that's Mark's whole job.
yeah, like you want to convince your spouse to go to dinner where you want to go to dinner,
Right.
right? Or not to go see the mother-in-law on Sunday afternoon. I mean, everyone wants to change someone's mind about something.
But never your mother-in-law.
Never the mother-in-law. She's always right. But the kids, we got to change their minds occasionally, right? So there's 5 basic aha moments that were in the research that Jonah found. And he kind of starts off with, hey, when we want to change something and change someone's mind, a lot of times we start with the physical world. So if I want to move a chair, I'm going to push a chair and I'm going to push harder until it actually moves and it's going to move across the room. I'm going to change its physical state. So we associate a lot of how we're going to change someone's mind with the physical state changes. And so, the number one thing he says is don't push harder. We just need to take the parking brake off. So if someone is not want to change their mind, let's find out what is holding them up. What is the barrier that they have their brakes on for? And, in one of his books, he goes into if a parking brake is on in a car, we can put it in drive. We can give it more gas. We can turn the wheels, but it's not going to go anywhere, right? Not very fast anyway until we get the parking brake off. So if we try to change someone's mind, we think that if we just add that more information or more good reasons, then they're eventually going to do whatever we ask. But actually what we found is adding more pressure, it only creates more resistance. And so, instead, if we'll work on, thinking about sitting in a car parked on that gentle slope, kind of getting that analogy going, then when we push harder and harder, it doesn't get anywhere, we can remove those brakes and get barriers to action removed so that the persuasion kind of happens naturally. The car's going to start rolling on the hill when those are off. Number 2 was somewhat related, but it was to reduce basically their reactance, so how they react to the change, by offering a choice. I experiment all these on my kid and my team as well, right? My team knows that I'm always experimenting and trying new things. They know if I suggest something, it's just kind of me testing the water. It's not so much I'm really going to make the change, but they're wonderful people. So if we're going to reduce the reactance, we need to give them a little bit of freedom of control over our lives. I mean, and I kind of relate this a little bit to salesmen. I mean, when you have a salesman, everyone's guards just go up, The minute the car salesman is walking towards you, you're thinking, we are not buying a car. We are not buying a car.
Yep.
And that kind of comes too from some owners, especially the high level like innovators. A lot of them that I work with, their teams they dread, oh my gosh, what is our next idea going to be? Because it's going to cause more work. And so to disarm those defenses, you can give someone a menu of 2 or 3 options. And some might be worse than others, but they got options and they got a chance to choose a little bit of what they could do. Another big one is just kind of easing their endowment, basically, by pointing out the cost of the status quo. People are just naturally attached to the things that they're already doing, the ideas that they already have. I remember when I bought my very first store, they were still stamping the back of every class 2 narcotic with a red N. And they were still stamping the back of every 3 through 5 with a red C, which was a rule like 25 years ago.
Right.
It's like, what a waste of time going through all those books and stamping those hard copies. By the way, the prescription number is printing an N or a C, next to the number.
Right.
They couldn't give up that stamp. And so helping them loosen their grip and just show them all the time you're spending on that, the status quo is not really as easy or harmless as we might think. And so if we can make the inconvenience of the change look more appealing than the cost of the inaction, that tends to really help people to kind of change their mind a little bit. And I think pharmacists run into this a lot with patients too, and I use these techniques a lot with the people I coach, try to help them figure out how can we move this person forward. Another one, which it seems simple, but we don't ever do it, is we shrink the distance by asking for less. And so if you're going to start, immunizations was your example earlier, instead of saying, hey, let's give 1,000 immunizations this year, hey, let's start immunizations. Tell me what you think you'd be interested in helping me with,
Right.
When someone walks in the door wanting one of those. And And we hope that if we, if people of a different political persuasion will suddenly get it, is what we think. And we're immediately going to switch to our side of the ideas. But we got to shrink that distance. So ask for less first, get that to go, and then you can always ask for more later, once it goes well and they see it's not that bad now that we've started.
Yeah.
And once it's like a manageable change, there's a fascinating guy that contributed to this research. He's a physical trainer who was like a bodybuilder, and he had an accident and he's paralyzed now. And so he had to figure out how to be a personal trainer and make a living sitting in a wheelchair, not being able to show people how to do the workout. And, one thing that he has really gotten into is the psychology behind behaviors and how people show up to act. And, one thing that he has started is, let's get the routine of you showing up to the gym. So I want you to come and I want you to work out for 5 minutes. And you can choose. Is it 3 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever you choose, we're going to do it every week. And once you're coming for 5 minutes every single week, 3 times a week, now I can add on 5 more minutes and it's not that big a deal to you.
Right.
And then I can add on 5 more minutes. And so just kind of getting to start. And then, the number 5 is just alleviate uncertainty by lowering the barrier, basically, to whatever you're going to trial. And I always, I quote a lot of different authors, so I love to read just organizational psychology. But Jim Collins always says, don't ever tell people how you're going to get there. Always tell them where you're headed.
Right.
And I think that's part of that lowering that barrier to the trial is, hey guys, we're gonna try this for a little while. Here's where we're trying to get. That's where we're headed. And what we're about to change in workflow may or may not work, and I might change my mind tomorrow. But we're gonna try it and see how it works. And I think getting that combination. I told you about employee engagement. I think there's a quote I really like that says, if a child is poor in math and good at tennis, most people would hire a math tutor, but I would rather hire a tennis coach. That's from the 9 Lies of Work. We think everyone needs to be cross-trained and diverse, but the research now shows if they call it, I think they call it pointy in the book. We want to lean into people's pointiness. How can we lean into their strengths? But if you can figure out what their strengths are, if you can understand what makes them show up their best self. Another quote is kind of interesting that I think helps people show up their best self. But, if you want to say that learning, can only happen when a child is interested, is kind of where the quote comes from. If he's not interested in what you're trying to teach them, and I see this in my own kid, it's like throwing marshmallows at their head and calling it eating. And that's a lot of what's going on in our pharmacies today. We come in from a conference like Connect or NCPA, and oh my gosh, I learned about this great new service we're going to offer, and they don't even know if they're interested in hearing what you have to say or not. Tell them what's in it for them. Lower that barrier to trial. We see that a lot of times with email, right? You get however many gigabytes for free, and then you fall in love with it, and it says, hey, we're going to start charging you 99 cents because you've outgrown your storage. Or Dropbox is another one.
Dropbox did that.
You've outgrown it. And those are examples that Jonah gives. But if you can get people to show up their best selves, and you can use these barriers to change and try to help motivate them, and then people can choose how they're going to show up. And I would say another thing is people kind of get stuck in a plan. And almost everyone that works for me today would probably tell you that what they're doing for me today is not at all what they thought they were hired for.
Right.
But it's
that's kind of the pioneer motto, right?
That's what happens here too.
I was all the time. Pioneer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I talked to 4 or 5 different Pioneer employees at the convention, at the conference you guys had, and hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. They say, oh, well, I'm doing this now for the company, and it's like, oh, do you like that? And they said, well, you know what? I actually love it. It's actually pretty good. I really like that, And so, but that's the key is I am a pharmacist who loves to be a pharmacist, but I spend all my days, coaching. I love the employee engagement and get people to show up their best self and ultimately just move pharmacy forward by doing that.